Funding for this program is made possible by Burke Nursery and Garden Center in Burke, Virginia. You'll find trees and shrubs, perennials and annuals, water garden supplies, houseplants, and bird and gardening supplies. Burke Nursery also provides landscape, plant diagnostic, and installation services, and much more. For more information, you can check out their website or call 703-323-1188.
Welcome to Gardening with Burke Nursery, the show where we help you grow your garden, increase the curb appeal of your yard, and share information on all plants. I'm your host, Misty Kuceris, the horticulturalist at Burke Nursery and Garden Center. A lot of questions that I get from customers relate to fertilizers and soil amendments that they may find at the store or they may find online. In some cases, these may seem a bit exotic, like earthworm castings or lobster meal. In other cases, some of the additions to soil bags may just seem confusing. So today, I'd like to answer your questions on soil supplements. When I talk about soil supplements, I'm talking about anything that you add to the soil to improve the health of the soil and increase its benefits to your plant. These supplements aren't just for outdoor plants or your lawn. Many of these supplements are also just as important for your houseplant. So I'd like to start with one of the newer products on the market, but one of the older products in our environment, earthworm castings. I love it when I get kids coming into the store and they're there with their parents or maybe an older sibling, and what they want to do, those that can read, the young kids that can read, they'll look at the bag and go, what is this? It says earthworm castings. Ooh, what is the earthworm castings? And what happens is often the adult with the child will just start kind of chortling and go, well, you know, when the earthworm eats, it's kind of what's left behind in the soil. And then the little kid will go, oh, wow, did you mean it's worm poop? Yes, it is. It is considered one of the best fertilizers around. It's very high and very rich in iron, sulfur, calcium, and then your three top ingredients in any fertilizer, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. As a matter of fact, research that has been done by Ohio State University and Cornell University, as well as research in other countries, has shown that by using earthworm castings with your plants or on your lawn will increase the strength and growth of the plant, anywhere from, believe it or not, 57 to 100%, 57 to 200%. So it will increase the size of your fruit. It'll increase the size of your veggies. It'll increase the quality and quantity of your flowers, and it'll improve on the colors. And part of that is that iron works very well with plants. Calcium is not only a factor in determining what the pH is for your soil, but calcium is also what the plants need to make sure that their cells can grow well and repair. So how much earthworm castings do you use? Well, it varies. The good news is if you read the back of the bags will actually tell you how much. So when you have a potted plant, if you're repotting your plant, what you do is you take about 1 part earthworm castings, and you also take 3 parts of the potting mix. And what's nice about earthworm castings, and I want to show you because a lot of people think, well, if it's the debris, then what does it look like? And the earthworm casting just looks like wonderful topsoil. It just really is phenomenal. The other is that you can apply, and again, the bags will tell you how much to apply with your vegetable garden or how much to apply with your other garden, your regular flowering garden. It is a little pricey when it comes to doing your lawn with earthworm castings. So for your lawn, I would recommend some other soil amendments. But as far as flower gardens, as far as potted plants, definitely consider the earthworm castings. Now, the next thing that I'd like to talk about is a big question that I get from customers. And customers will always be looking at their various fertilizer bags. I mean, these are different types of potting mixes that you can find. And they'll look at the back. And at the back, you always have the ingredients of what's in them. And some of them, and again, the ingredients of what you'll see in the bags are here. And some of the bags actually will have earthworm castings in them. But the biggest thing that all your potting mix or your potting soil has, it either has what we call vermiculite or it has perlite. And there is a difference between the two. So let's talk about the difference with vermiculite. Vermiculite, because it is part of the soil, or because you add it to the soil, it's considered a soil amendment. And vermiculite is mined. As a matter of fact, say this fast 3 times, it's hydrated magnesium aluminum silicate. And if you go online, you may say that people call it mica, but it's not mica. That is a different mineral. It is a silicate, so it's kind of in the same family if you want to get into the geology. But what happens is that heat is used to process the particular mineral, and once it's heated, if I can get this bag open, there we go. Once it's heated, it is this brownish, sometimes it's a gray material. And it is a natural material. I do recommend when you're working with vermiculite or when you're working with perlite, be a little careful because there is a lot of dust that flies. But this is basically, when heated up, this is nature's sponge. The reason it's put in a lot of potting mixes is that it retains moisture. So when you water your plant and it has the vermiculite in it, the vermiculite absorbs the moisture and keeps the plant moist a lot longer. And that's where it becomes important when you're reading those ingredients on potting mixes. If you have plants that need to have moisture, then you want your potting mix to have vermiculite. It also actually helps with nutrients because vermiculite has calcium, which I've already mentioned goes to the cell growth of your plant. It has magnesium. Magnesium is what helps the plant get its chlorophyll. That's why if your plant's lacking magnesium, it can turn yellow because it's not getting enough chlorophyll. And the other thing that the vermiculite will add, it will add potassium. And when you look at your fertilizer bags, there's always 3 numbers. The first number is nitrogen, and that goes to increasing the flowers and the leaves of your plant. The next number, the middle number, is phosphorus, and that goes to increasing the root strength of your plant. And the last number is potash or potassium, which is for the overall health of the plant. So when I'm teaching kids about fertilizer, or even some of the folks that work at the garden center about fertilizer, I talk about up, down, and around. Nitrogen up, phosphorus down, potassium, potash around. Where this could be a problem is that there are some plants that do not like a lot of moisture. And so the one place you don't want to add vermiculite to is your epiphytes. And those, or epiphytes, excuse me, and those are orchids or the pink quill plant. You don't want to add vermiculite to succulents or cactus, because if they have too much moisture at their roots, you're going to end up with root rot. And the other, in an outdoor level, you never want to add vermiculite to rhododendrons or azaleas. And the reason for that, again, is that that vermiculite retains moisture. And as a sponge, you don't want that moisture at the roots of a rhododendron or an azalea. Otherwise, you could end up with a disease called Phytophthora, say that fast 3 times, which is a fungal disease that can kill a plant within a short while. So there are benefits to vermiculite. Now, the other product that you'll see on your soil mix bags is called perlite. And perlite and vermiculite are not the same. And I'm not going to open this large bag to show you, but this is a wonderful picture of what perlite looks like. Perlite is white. To me, perlite almost looks like popcorn. And as a matter of fact, perlite, which it is a soil amendment because you're adding it to soil, perlite is also a mined product. Perlite is volcanic rock. And what they do is they heat perlite up, the volcanic rock up, until it explodes. Here's where perlite becomes different. When I was talking about the vermiculite is a sponge. Perlite, instead, is like sand. And a lot of people will actually call it a substitute, a lightweight substitute for sand. What it does is in the earth, in the soil, and in honesty, when I was preparing for today's show, I thought of all those soil science classes that I took and thought, God, maybe I want to go back and review some of them, because part of what we need in our soil is we need air. We need air spaces in our soil. And oftentimes when people come to the nursery and they say, my shrub isn't doing well, my first question is, how old is it? And if that shrub is more than 5 years old and you've never applied a soil amendment to that area, then what happens is that soil gets hard. It gets what we call compacted, hard as a rock. And the air can't move through that soil. And when air can't move through that soil, your roots can't breathe, literally. It's as if someone took a shopping bag and put it over your own head. Try breathing that way. So perlite lets your roots breathe. It increases the space, it improves the drainage. It also, strange as it may sound, but if you think about the science behind this, it also actually improves the temperature of your roots. It prevents that temperature from fluctuating. And that's important. And also because it moves the air, it helps with the humidity for your plants. So when you're looking at soil amendments, it's a wonderful soil amendment to use, especially for your cuttings, if you're going to take cuttings of plants and want to root them. It is also wonderful in your potting mixes for orchids or for succulents, because it lets the roots dry out between the watering. The only thing is sometimes I will get customers come in, or even friends of mine will say, Misty, you're the horticulturalist. Why am I getting this white stuff on the top of my pot? And I'll say, okay, what kind of potting mix do you use? And if I look at the potting mix, usually there's perlite in it. Perlite is so lightweight. This huge bag weighs like nothing. That's how lightweight it is. That perlite can at times actually come out of the soil and rise to the surface. So you're not getting a fungal infection with your plants or anything. You're not getting a fungus on that soil. It just sometimes perlite will come to the surface. So what is the difference between perlite and what is the difference between vermiculite? Or stated another way, what's the difference between the two? Your vermiculite, that retains moisture. That works as a sponge. That's always, when the soil starts drying out and there's still enough moisture in that vermiculite, it will release more moisture into the soil. The perlite, that creates the airspace so that your soil and your roots can breathe. It dries the soil out between waterings because it gives that chance for that soil to breathe. The other is that it works, like I said, like a lightweight sand. So you can use this with bark or with some others in lieu of sand. When you read on the internet about using sand, you can use perlite instead. The vermiculite gives more nutrient retention in the soil, calcium, magnesium, potassium, even phosphorus, and the perlite insulates the roots from temperature fluctuations. And the one thing I almost forgot to mention with vermiculite is that when you're planting seeds directly into the ground, you will see a lot of us recommend that as you increase that little furrow, make that little hole for planting your seeds in the ground, what you first do is you take vermiculite and you just put it into the holes, and then, or put it into that hole of where you're planting your seed, and then you put the seed in and then you cover it. Why? Because vermiculite prevents damping off, which means it can prevent the seed from getting a fungal infection. Where with the perlite, it's great if you want to root new plants. So you could take a cutting from an old plant, you put it, not from a, well, it depends, but you can take cutting from a plant, you can put it into the perlite and leave it there until you start seeing that it's beginning to get its roots. Now, another thing that you will find on a lot of potting soil bags is the word mycorrhizae, or sometimes they'll just keep it simple and call it microbes. Mycorrhizae actually means fungal root. And there's just no way I've got a microscope that could even take a picture to show you. So if you want to see what this fungal root mycorrhizae looks like, then you are definitely going to have to go to your search engines and put it into the search engines to see the pictures. But this is a fungus that has a symbiotic relationship with plants, and especially trees. What it does, it attaches to the roots of your plants. So if you have it in a potting mix with your houseplants, it will attach itself to the roots of your houseplants. In nature, it attaches, like I said, to trees, to shrubs, and what's phenomenal is that it increases the ability of trees, shrubs, even houseplants to get phosphorus, which is that middle number, that number for the root strength. Mycorrhizae, because it's under the ground, it can't do photosynthesis. And it wants to live. And it wants to photosynthesize, poor baby. But when it's attached to a root of a plant, that plant will give it the photosynthesis it needs. And what the mycorrhizae will do is it'll absorb nourishment from the soil, and it'll put that nourishment back into the roots of the plant. Just phenomenal the way nature works. The next soil supplement that I'd like to talk about is charcoal. Charcoal, in a lot of ways, doesn't really give a lot of nutrients to the soil, but what charcoal does is it helps the soil drain, and it helps refresh your soil. You'll find charcoal in orchid mix for that reason, and you may find it even in some of your succulent mixes. But what I do recommend is when you're planting a house plant, it's a wise thing to put charcoal in the base. And charcoal, I just want to show you what charcoal looks like. It's a very, very lightweight substance. And actually, with charcoal, you need to be a little cautious. Sometimes when I'm doing a lot of repotting, where I'm going to be using a lot of charcoal, I'll actually wear a face mask, because the last thing I want is to have this charcoal come into my body. So I'm going to stand away right now and put out the charcoal. And as you can see, it's little bits. And it does help with the aeration of soil in a way that perlite helps with the aeration of soil, and it helps with the drainage. Where it really helps with houseplants, and excuse me while I duck here, is a pot that you can put the charcoal into the pot. And actually, if you have holes, drainage holes in the pot, then what I recommend is that you take a coffee filter and you put that coffee filter down, and then you just take the charcoal and put it in the pot. And all you want to do is just basically cover the bottom of the pot, so that that way, when you water the plant, this will absorb a lot of the water. It'll help improve the drainage, and it'll, in a way, kind of act like a wick, putting that water back into the main part of the soil. And this will help with the roots and help prevent root rot, especially on your houseplants. And then finally, what I want to talk about is one of my favorite, I would say this is newcomer to people that don't live on the East Coast or that don't live near the ocean, but this is lobster meal. And actually, in 2018, EPA actually gave a grant to students at the University of Massachusetts, the Lowell, Massachusetts campus, so yay Massachusetts, where the students looked at shellfish waste and how to use shellfish waste. Well, before I moved here to Virginia, I actually lived in a little town called Marblehead, Massachusetts. Marblehead, near Salem, Massachusetts, north of Boston, is on a peninsula. The beach was a 10-minute walk, not drive, 10-minute walk from my house. Phenomenal. Well, a lot of the fishermen would take their catch of the day, sell it to the local restaurants, and then create roadside stands where they would sell that seafood and lobsters right there to those of us if they hadn't sold everything to the restaurants. The question, though, always was, what do you do with the shellfish? What do you do with the waste? And finally, thinking of a sustainable universe and thinking of what you can do, they developed a fertilizer that now has lobster meal in it. And some of the fertilizers, this one in particular has some worm castings, it has some kelp. lobster shells, or lobster meal as they prefer to call it, as well as shrimp meal or clams or crabs. All of those shells, instead of tossing them out and throwing them out, can be put in your garden. And when you put them in your garden, you get a phenomenal amount of calcium. And as I've already mentioned, calcium is phenomenal for that growth of the cells. And there are a lot of plants that need calcium. Your vegetables, like your tomato, well, technically, I guess you could say it's a fruit, but your tomatoes, your eggplant, your zucchini, all of those need to have calcium. So this is, especially if you grow a vegetable garden, this is something that you want to consider. It's fun to look at your garden, your yard, and even your houseplants, and to enjoy the beauty they bring into your life. While you don't need to use all of these soil supplements, which I've discussed in today's show, using the right supplements will help your plants and your lawn continue to grow and thrive. I'm glad that I was able to share information on some of the soil supplements available. If you have any questions about these soil supplements, or if you have any questions about your plants, lawn, or gardening in general, just contact me at misty@burkenursery.com. I'm your host, Misty Kuceris, and I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me here at Gardening with Burke Nursery. I'm looking forward to helping you grow your garden.
Funding for this program is made possible by Burke Nursery and Garden Center in Burke, Virginia. You'll find trees and shrubs, perennials and annuals, water garden supplies, houseplants, and bird and gardening supplies. Burke Nursery also provides landscape, plant diagnostic, and installation services, and much more. For more information, you can check out their website or call 703-323-1188.